Good afternoon, everyone. We're just letting people in and we'll start in a minute. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just giving 2 minutes for everyone to arrive and we'll start in a moment. Hi, Chris. Okay, so people are slowly coming in, but I think that we can already start because we don't have a lot of time today, so better be efficient about it. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar organized by the Police Traffic Efficiency Working Group, webinar on digitizing traffic circulation plans. I'm Laura Babillo. I'm the coordinator of the Traffic Efficiency Working Group at Police, and I'll be your host today. Just some quick instructions before we start. The meeting is being recorded and it's also transcribed, so you can activate the transcription if you would like to have subtitles as our speakers are going through the presentation. Please, mainly for the other speakers, mute yourself when you are not speaking so we can avoid having any background noise and to facilitate that our audience can hear everything that you're saying. And then finally, for all the participants today, you can ask your questions in the chat box at the bottom or the Q&A box if you prefer. We'll be looking at both and then we'll take up the discussion after the presentations. So our agenda today, we have a few speakers, but we don't have many distinct presentations after this very short welcome done by myself. We will have some policy context with a presentation on the ITS directive and the RTTI key principles done by Tiffany Flemings. You probably remember her from previous webinars where we had her doing also a bit of a policy context from the perspective of the European Commission, and now she's here in her capacity as a part of the Dutch Ministry of Transport and Water Management. But I'll allow her to present herself later when she's speaking. And then after this policy context, we'll hear from the work done by Police and our members. We'll hear from 3 of our members, Michael Libari from the city of Gothenburg, Gerard van Dijk from CROW, and Luke Misson from the city of Helmond. And they will guide us through the work, the paper that that we published on digitizing traffic circulation plans, and also looking at how this can be now implemented or how we can start working on its implementation. And then finally, we have prepared just one short slide with what we think is the traffic circulation plan roadmap. And I'll take care of this. You'll see me at the end. After each of the presentations, we'll have some time for Q&A and for discussion. So please don't hesitate to write your questions as the presentations go along so we can pick them all up at the end. So that's it for me. Let's not take more time with the introduction, and I'll give immediately the floor to Tiffany. So please, Tiffany.
Yes, yeah. So, thank you, Laura. Thank you for introducing me. As indeed, I think I'm not sure who. I cannot really see who's in the webinar, but I think many of you already know me from my previous position. That was just I recently left at the European Commission. I was there in charge of the portfolio on the ITS directive and the RTTI, and monitoring also the member states, how do you say, developments in this area. And I was very happy to hear that Polis has set up a working group on digitalizing the traffic circulation plans, especially setting up a standard for that and discussing with member states on how to organize this, because I think this is a very key element of the legislative framework that the European Commission has set up for this. So my current position is at the Dutch Ministry. So I left the Commission, current position at the Dutch Ministry, and in that capacity, I'm still working in the ITS directive and the deployment of the delegated regulations in the Netherlands. So still working on the same topic, but from another perspective, from the member state perspective. So thank you for having me, Laura. I hope that I can guide you a bit through the key principles of the ITS directive and the real-time traffic information services delegated regulation, and related to the specific element of the traffic circulation plan. So can I have the next slide, please? I think most of you know that the ITS directive has been in place since already 2010, and had to increase harmonized deployment and operational use of ITS systems and services across the EU. It provides a legal framework containing provisions for scope and opportunities to prescribe detailed deployment specifications in the 4 priority areas. And the priority areas being the information and mobility ITS services, traffic and travel information services, if we talk about road safety and security ITS services, and also had the very upcoming element of the cooperative, connective and automated mobility. So in recent years, with the publication of the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy and its focus on the digital transformation of the transport system, I think that it became very obvious that the ITS directive needed an update, had to make sure that all these new elements, such as connecting automated mobility, but also mobility as services, that specifications for deployed harmonized deployment in Europe can be made I would say mandated and obligatory in across Europe. So, for instance, if you talk about the field of traffic and travel information services, right now, the current landscape is really fragmented, and with uncoordinated deployment of these services, so there's a lack of geographical continuity, there's a lack of good quality of data, and also in the current situation, you see that private service providers provide individual route advice and do not, for instance, take into account local policies for routing, so leading to more traffic on roads that are really not equipped to handle those volumes. So when revising the legal framework, I think that these elements of experience that is there in all the member states had needed to be included in the update of the legislation, and the ITS directive in that sense was amended in the last 2 years already ago and entered into force this year. Can I have the next slide, please? And so here you see the relation of the complete legal framework. So you have the ITS directive and its amendment in 2023. And what we call the delegated regulations are supplements to the ITS directive. So meaning that the ITS directive is more like an umbrella framework. So it gives the Commission capacities to make specifications on specific activities in the field of ITS. And these specific specifications can be done via delegated regulation. And we already have like 6 in place, one on multimodal traffic information service, one on road safety related information service, one on e-call, one on secure, safe and secure truck parking. And what's on the agenda for today is also the one on real-time traffic information services. And if I can have the next slide, I think most of you also know that this one, the RTTI delegated regulation, was also amended in 2022 already, entered into force this January. So we are really already in the deployment phase of the RTTI in Europe. So based on the results of the requirements that were set in the 2015 version of the RTTI, it became obvious that some of the issues really needed to be solved. So, for instance, if you talk about real-time traffic information services, they don't end at the 10T. They're not information services just for the highways. They're also information services really relating to urban nodes, really relating to traffic in cities. So it cannot be case that the information that is the basis of the information for real-time services is only mandatory for the 10T. So the extension of the geographical scope was a really big wish for the revision. And also some data types were added, especially the ones on access restrictions and on charging infrastructure. As these data types became more and more, very crucial for good information services. And I think the key element I think in the current RTTI is the mandating of the uptake of certain data types in traffic information service that are being provided by private service providers. The reason for this is that what we saw is that in the end, most of the time, if you talk about making data available, is that road authorities are usually in charge of doing that. Because if you talk about traffic circulation plans, if you talk about traffic measures, if you talk about temporary traffic measures, if you talk about restrictions, it is in almost all the cases that the road authorities is in charge of doing so. So making this data available costs a lot of money, costs a lot of time. And if you have it available, then you want to make sure that this data is actually being used. And in the previous versions of this RTTI, this was not the case. And it was always the case that that these private sector service providers provide individual route advice without really taking into account local policies, especially if you talk about navigation advice. So it was very simple just to have a navigation advice that goes via school routes or via residential areas, and that is something that within in the context of this legislation we want to prevent from happening. So, and to ease this a bit also on the side of the private sector, we want to make sure that all this information that is to be made available by the public authorities, that it is made available in a standardized digital format. So that it's not just, here you have a report, this is my traffic circulation plan. But no, you have to do it in a certain way so that everybody understands, okay, this is what we mean by traffic circulation plan. This is the policy that is behind it. And here you can use it in your navigation advice for your routing mechanism. So here you have the whole sequence of making this data available in a standardized digital format, publish it on a national access point. And if you do that, then private service providers are mandated to use this data in their services. Very crucial element, I would say. Can I have the next slide here? And to add to that, the ITS directive was amended in 2023. So if you see that the RTTI makes data, ensures the accessibility of data on national access point, the ITS directive, the revision is really about making sure that this data actually becomes available. Because in many times, especially these crucial data types that are, for especially for cities, really important, the traffic circulation plans, that if this data is not available at all, then you don't have as a private service provider, you're not able to use this information. So the revision, a key element of the revision of the ITS directive is that it's not just about accessibility of data, but it's also about availability of data. So here you have the requirement in the ITS directive itself to really digitalize data if you have the underlying information available. So it does not mean that you have to create a traffic circulation plan, but if you have one, as for instance in a Word format, then you have to make it available in a digital standardized manner. So that is the basic sequence here. If you talk about the ITS directive and the RTTI, so it's a whole chain of the value chain of the service, having the data, making the data, of creating the data, having it, making it available in a standardized digital manner, then publish it on the national access point, and then use it in a private service. So, and this is for some elements, some types of data. So in the amended directive, we have several data types that need to be digitalized. And the other, I would say, key element is here is that we also talk about improved data quality. So it's not just about, okay, if you have the information, just put it on a national access point and make sure that the service providers use it. It's also about making sure that you have agreements, public-private sector together, on a minimum level of the data quality. Okay, so how does this work out? In the next slide, please. You see that if you talk about the legal framework, then you have the what and the how. So if you talk about availability of data, then that is managed in the ITS directive, in the amended ITS directive. So here you have the requirements of digitalizing the process and digitize the data if the underlying information available. These are mentioned in the new articles 6A in the directive, and it really goes for specific data types that are mentioned in Annex 3. If you talk about accessibility of data and the creation of NAPs and making data discoverable in specific standards, then you look at the requirements of the delegated regulation. So, for instance, on real-time traffic information delegated regulation. And it does not say that reuse of the data maybe it has to be for free. It can be via a license agreement, but there should not be on any unnecessary restrictions. And then the next part then is if you talk about the mandatory use of data in RTTI services, that is really specific a requirement of the delegated regulation on the real-time traffic information. And there's mentioning of the specific data types that on traffic circulation plans, traffic regulations and traffic restrictions, and on temporary traffic management measures. So with that, if you have this in place in due time, there will be a gradual improvement of the data availability for the whole of Europe. So if you look at this slide, you see, look on the vertical, you see the volume of data, and horizontal, you see the geographical scope, and you see the volume of data gradually improving over time. So we start with the TEN-T and the primary road network, also in the urban nodes. So the requirements in the ITS directive and in the RTTI are set related to 2025, 2027. And later there will be an extension of the geographical scope in the direction of 2028. And in the years to come after that, there will be opportunities for the Commission to set new dates for data availability of data types that are mentioned in the ITS directive, but not yet have to be made available in a digitized manner. So the upcoming years, more and more data will become available and will be mandated to be used in private services. Just to give you, the next slide, please. Just to give you a little bit of clarification on how the ITS directive and the RTTI data types relate to each other. They're not similar. So, for instance, if you look at the ITS directive, there's no data types on data on infrastructure, no data types on real-time use of the network. But in the RTTI, you see those types coming. So there's a really have to look into the specifics of the annexes, and there you will see that there is differences in the data types that are mentioned. So that sorry, that also means that the requirements relate to different data types. So in the end, sorry for that. In the end, the requirements that are related to a network, related to a date, related to a data type are different. So please be very careful reading and applying the requirements in the deployment of the legislative framework in your country, because there are specifics that need to be taken into account. So to conclude, my last slide, please. Similar to what I was just mentioning, the ITS directive is not the same as the delegated regulations. Data types differ. There are in the directive 15 RTTI data types, while in the RTTI there are 47 data types. The scope differs. Sometimes we talk about 10T, sometimes we talk about urban nodes, sometimes it's about primary roads, sometimes about main roads, sometimes it's even about the entire road network. Also, the the entry into force dates differ. So sometimes something has to be available by 2025, sometimes 2027, sometimes 2028, or even later. And the requirements themselves differ. So we talk about creation of data and access to data. They're really two different things. So, and in general, I would say the delegated regulations include more data types and concern a larger geographical scope than the ITS directive, but the requirements are easier. So they're not about creating data, but they're about publishing data. So this is what is the legislative framework, I would say. And I think the next presentation will be about deployment and how to do that. But I really want to thank POLIS in this, because if you look at the legislative framework, there's no mentioning of what is a traffic circulation plan. It's only a name. And it does not say, okay, it has to, it has to include this and it has to include that. And you have to organize it in this way and you have to, standardize in this way. So there's a whole lot of work still to be done in order to make sure that we actually, as road authorities, that we actually have a standard for digitalizing our traffic circulation plans and actually mandating private service providers to use a traffic circulation plan. And I think here we are really at the start of having a harmonized EU-wide, creating a standard EU-wide that can be used within all countries to start this work from really happening. And then the benefits, the real benefits of actually having a traffic circulation plan, making sure that in-car route advice and your policy, or our policy, also as a Dutch ministry, our policy is actually being used in route and navigation advices, is, I would say, a very good return on effort that we are really doing right now in making sure that we are actually digitalizing our information base. So that is what I want to conclude with, and I thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, let's have them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tiffany, for a great comprehensive summary of the legislative framework. I don't see any questions in the chat for now. So I think we'll go directly into the more implementation-oriented presentation, as you just said, on the traffic circulation plans. And if there is anything, just don't hesitate to write up in the chat. I think Tiffany will stay with us as well. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mikael, Gerard, and Luke. Mikael will start. And to present the work that we have been doing at POLIS in collaboration with many of our members on the topic of traffic circulation plans. Mikael, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura, and thank you very much, Tiffany, for your great presentation. my name is Mikael Ivari. I work for the City of Gothenburg, and I also the chairperson of the Police Traffic Efficiency Working Group. And I will tell you a little bit, will give a little introduction and background to the work we have done. And if you change for next slide, please. Yeah. Already in March 2023, we established the POLIS-RTTI Task Force, which is a close collaboration of 6 local authorities from 4 member states. Except for Gothenburg, Sweden, we also have Amsterdam, Helmond, and Groningen from the Netherlands, Stuttgart from Germany, and Ghent from Belgium. There are other members that support this initiative as well, but they are a little bit less active in the work. Why did we start this task force? Yeah, the key drivers were that we identified that there is a lack of national local level cooperation on digital implementations, specifically when it comes to RTTI and the specific data items such as the traffic circulation plan. And there was also a large motivation for members to work jointly in operationalizing and implementing the RTTI. The objectives of the task force is to share knowledge and good practice in a structured manner, to move forward the implementation of RTTI, to come up with recommendations and guidelines to support RTTI implementation, and also to have a coordinated communication towards external stakeholders, exemplified, for instance, through initiatives like NAPCOR. The first task the task force took on was the work of harmonizing digitalization of traffic circulation plans. As Tiffany mentioned previously, it was more or less a name in the legislation, traffic circulation plan. So we saw that there was a need to fill that name with content, and we published our first position paper in November 2024. And you will hear more about this later on during this webinar. Then the next task we intend to move on is to work a little bit more on how to access in-vehicle data using friend conditions. And this is to start also this year. Next slide, please. Yeah, so why did we do this position paper? As you heard from the previous presenter as well, RTTI services are essential for modern transportation, enabling better navigation, traffic management, and road safety. It helps road users, providing up-to-date information, making journeys safer and smoother, but also has the potential to reduce societal burdens. Yeah. Traffic circulation plans are vital to RTTI, but are also inconsistently interpreted across different public bodies. And of course, this creates challenges when it comes to service providers and their obligation to implement these traffic circulation plans. So the position paper explores the road ahead for digitizing TCPs, and we believe that it will be a good groundwork for consistent EU-wide implementation. And next, please. So what is a traffic circulation plan then? After having several meetings and discussions and working on this topic for almost 2 years, we have agreed that a traffic circulation plan is something that guides traffic flow based on policy objectives. It establishes a framework to optimize the transportation network and provide access to key destinations, offering more desirable routes and redirecting unwanted through traffic without resorting to road closures or other regulative measures. And this is important because a traffic circulation plan must align with existing regulations, road signs, and physical infrastructure. So it's something different. The policy perspective is something different. It's complementing existing regulations, road signs, and physical infrastructure. Stefan mentioned as well, it's important that it's communicated through a standardized communication language for service providers and offer reliable data through traffic information providers. We believe that it improves service for mobility network users by providing clear information on available routes and their intended use. Next, please. However, as you realize, there are some challenges when it comes to implementing traffic circulation plans. One very important fundamental challenge is the limited awareness and accessibility of traffic circulation plans. And as you understand, there are conflicts between the optimal individual choices versus policy, overall societal policy goals. There is also a complexity at multiple levels, especially if there are many road authorities involved, all from the local road authority to regional to national. And what is obvious, there is a lack of standardization. Then, of course, we have talked about that also. It's important to integrate with navigation service in order to make this happen. And we believe that TCPs are a fundamental and important data type for the future, where we will have a more automated digital transportation system. Next, please. So, how can we operationalize traffic circulation plans? How do we translate the key traffic circulation plans elements into a digital traffic circulation plans? We believe that the answer lies in something called functional road classification, which is a system that categorizes roads according to their intended function and importance within the road network. Next, please. However, there is an obvious need for the harmonization of functional road crosses across Europe. They should be digitized using a European standard to ensure consistency across regions. There are some standards available today, but they're applied unevenly, and some countries use national approaches, while other countries lack implementation entirely. And it's also often unclear whether cities are adequately involved in the development process of the standards. An example, have cities been involved when functional road crosses approaches in some countries have been established? Then we also see that existing standards typically apply to motorized traffic, but they overlook multimodal mobility, like to travel and public transport. We think that is important, an important step, development step for the future that should be considered. Future harmonization must address these gaps to ensure inclusive, sustainable urban mobility in the digital era. Next, please. So here is where I will hand over to Gerard, and he will explain to you and present to you a step-by-step approach to the digitalization of traffic circulation plans. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mikael, for your introduction and presentation on our paper, and I'll try to take you through more practical kind of point of view to implement actually these functions. To do that, I think it really helps to very, very quickly look at where are the specific data items in the RTTI, so that we clearly understand what kind of data we are actually pushing here. So if we look at the first layer in the RTTI, we see a layer about the availability of infrastructure, the number of lanes, parking spaces, fuel stations, and that kind of stuff. That's mentioned in the first layer of the RTTI. If we put one layer on top of that, then we come to the traffic regulations, and that's where we actually find the traffic circulation plans. It's data item 2B, meaning that it's not the data types that are in 2A, mostly the traffic signs, because it's once again, it's very strongly related to one another, like Michael already pointed out. But we don't have a need to push this data twice. So if we put the road sign data into the data items that are as well in DataX available on 2A, then we need to figure out what to put in 2B on traffic circulation plans on that. One layer further, please, Laura, when we come to the state of the network, all kinds of temporary data that can be pushed along the situations that are occur on the network, like roadworks, but also bad weather conditions and all that kind of stuff. And the last layer, the fourth layer on the RTTI, is about the actual use of the network, like traffic volume, traffic speed, travel times, and that kind of data. So I think this picture makes it very clear how the RTTI is actually built up and in which layer we are trying to modify these traffic circulation plans. Let's go to our stepping model. We find it important to start this process with small steps at a time, because if we want too much to start with, then we may end up with nothing. I think it's very important that we try to have a common base in Europe, because if every country or even every region or even every city would digitalize the traffic circulation plan in their own way, then we can be kind of sure that service providers will not be able to use it or won't use it in the end. So the first step is to fill your data on your road classification. Road classification is something else than your traffic circulation plan, but of course it's related to one another in a certain way. For instance, a very wide road should not have a particular low function in the end. So it's not necessary, but good to have your data on your road classification, that you're aware of what roads are available, and not only yourself, but also for the reuse of service providers. Then we can go from there to the next step, and then we come to the functions. And there we want to use the functional road classification as we already know them for many years in the Inspire dataset, comes from the OpenStreetLR, and that's very familiar also for the service providers. So that's where we're trying to put the function of the road. So if we go one slide further, please, Laura, then we see that we're once again not acting on the road signs, but purely on the road functionality. We are currently in a situation that service providers each have their own road functionality that they made by themselves. And now we have the chance, like Tiffany already explained, that the reuse of this data became mandative a couple of years ago. Now we have the chance to put these policy indicators more into the route choice than before. So it actually pays off to put effort into this and to make sure that we get our road functionalities as a basis into this data. So that's quite an important step in the process, that we get our road functionalities available for the reuse of service providers. If we have that, we have to experience if that is enough and what will happen if we do that. And we can imagine that we need some local additions to fine-tune the whole system. So that's why we came up with the first 3 use cases to more and more fine-tune this. In the future, there may be more use cases, of course, but the first ones we can think of is, for instance, the avoiding of routes or certain areas. For instance, if you have a city and you have 2 roads available that sort of go around or through the city, that may have the same function, because the green road is actually more for through traffic, but the red road is collecting the traffic out of the city. That may come up with the same functionality in the FRC, but you want through traffic not to use the red route from a policy point of view. So the thing to do here is that we can set up some avoidance points in the data, that for through traffic you will avoid the red route and use the green route, even though they have the same function. That's an example on the city itself. This use case can also be used more locally. You go to the next slide, please. For instance, if you have a school zone, during the time that the school will go in and out, you can ask to the service providers to avoid the red route and please use the green route. But this can be dynamically, because if you have our 6 weeks summer holiday, it makes no sense to navigate around the school when it's an empty building. So this is more or less a dynamic example of use case 1. Then we can go to use case 2. Use case 2 is based on keeping the traffic on the main routes, even if we have some kind of congestion. Of course, there will be some exceptions to that, because if your original destination is on the local roads, then of course your navigation will have to take you there. But as long as you're out through traffic, we try to keep you as long as possible on the main roads. So that can be a use case to set up, once again, these avoiding points into your data when it gets crowded on the main roads, especially in areas where you don't have much availability of local roads, or these local roads are actually getting too crowded at that time. The third and last use case, and that's a bit more into the future, but let me explain it this way. We start to put up the traffic circulation plan from a car perspective. And it's a good reason for that, because most of the car drivers are actually using navigation systems. Pedestrians and bikers are using way less navigation, and public transport, of course, isn't even using that. So it makes sense to start with the car navigation, but in a certain period of time, we can create more and more multimodality to this. And in the multimodal way, you can try to separate the different modes that you have, preferred routes for cyclists, for your public transport, and for your car traffic, or even your logistics or transportation. I have the next one, please. Well, separating these traffic flows can be related to more efficiency and safety. They can be based on the desired vehicle usage as well, but they can also be based on the actual use of a certain route. For instance, if you have a route that is very often used by cyclists, then maybe not very practical from policy point of view to think of another route, but maybe that route that is used very often, that you can even more prioritize it with traffic lights to get that route even better. And then that's the main road where you collect your cycle traffic, for instance, in that local area, of course, not from the whole city. So this is a bit more for in the future, because what we do now, these functionalities that are in step 2 are actually based on car traffic. But in the end, we'll have to find a way to make these classifications more and more multimodal, to get the whole multimodal policy into this traffic circulation plan. Well, that's it for me at this point. Thank you very much for your attention, and Luc will tell you some more on the city of Helmond.
Thanks, Gerard, for mentioning me. Indeed, I'm Luc Misdom. I'm working for the city of Helmond, and I think we can all agree with Michael and Gerard that is a fine approach, I would say, but still really theoretical. And we always know the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So this is our first attempt from Helmond, and I think these pictures which are being showed now with you are quite similar to we all have. We made a certain classification with roads, starting with highways. In this case, is the black one, and then we go down step by step for more regional or interurban connections, which is red. Then we have the orange, the ring road, then the blue ones, which are leading towards the ring road from more neighboring cities or villages. In the end, the green ones, well, the yellow ones we haven't used, and in the end, all the other roads are white. We have 7 classes now in the Netherlands, or at least in the area where we are located. You can think of more. This is also only for cars. You can think of a multimodal approach as well. And if you think, I think it's a weird term that's being used, I try to translate this from Dutch to English. And we can argue on the translation, but in there itself is one of the main challenges. Because do we mean the same with what's a local distribution road, etc.? And that's why, next slide please, Laura, is we need to move over to the functional road classes that are being used by Inspire, in total 9 categories. For the ones who are a bit more advanced in these topics, this should be quite similar. But there was already a classification there with a description of what it would look like on paper. Next slide, Laura, or next action, I should say. And we try to come up with, well, okay, what does it mean? What is a proposal from our side already compared to what's being used in the Netherlands? So we can think of speed limits, for example, and you see them going down gradually. And sometimes it's really easy. The motorways is the same as what we have in highways. But for the functional road class 1, the major roads less important than motorways, wasn't something we thought of in the Netherlands. And what we can or should do in the Netherlands is to add a new road classification for us, like maybe the minor highways or the regional interurban connections, but with a national relevance, and go down step by step. But by going further down, it becomes more and more difficult to align to what we had in the Netherlands, or we have in the Netherlands, I should say, and what's an Inspire, and especially if you come to FRC 5, the local roads of high importance, could quite easily be the local connections we have, which were green in the picture we showed earlier, and also the ones in yellow, the local roads. Now, what should we do in the end? Should we split them in the Netherlands? Should we combine those? How does it relate to our policy objectives we once had? Should we use the local roads for this? But and how the road looks, does it really compare to the description that's being in the 3rd column? Those are all actions we need to take. And what we also saw is that for 7 and 8 in FRC, we haven't thought of that one. And maybe 7 can be added quite easily. But for 8, that's a more difficult one. So it proves all kinds of challenges. And it isn't that simple to align a national road class we once came up with the ones in Inspire. Next slide, Laura. But still, we will try to do this. We want to try to make a translation table on a national level. It's a working group also run by Gerard, to be honest. And can we come up with some definitions? How can we use this in the Netherlands, and hopefully come up with a new national standard, so we don't have to come up with all new traffic circulation plans, etc., but just by making one translation and can be made available to service providers and on our national access point. And my challenge for you, or my invitation to you on a European level, please try to do the same. In other cities and countries, come up with your own translation table as well and compare the proposals we made. Because it would be really weird if in Gothenburg it would be something completely different than what we came up with, because the end goal should be that we have some more harmonized road classes for our TCP. And I think we will have to make some attempts to get there. And hopefully this webinar can be a start for all of you to start up these actions. And then I will give over to Laura.
Thank you very much, Mikael. Gerard, look, we have here just one more one slide that summarizes exactly what had been said, how going from and what Gerard also said, from the physical layout of the road classification, then to the function of the road, that it's highly dependent on the policy, and then the work is now to be done on how to go from the different national policy function tables to the harmonized one like the INSPIRE. And we have one more slide. Just we came up with a bit of a roadmap of how we see now the continuation also of the work that we have done. As Mikael said, 2023, we established the Task Force. 2024, we finally published our paper, which, by the way, is available. Maybe, Sibyl, you can put the link to that. It's currently available in our website. This year, 2025, we're very focused on promoting all the work that we did. That's why you all are here, and trying to engage also with more stakeholders. And then, as it was repeated several times, this is very much a theoretical framework. We would like to keep working on it by 2026, have a proof of concept, pilot this, 2027 and start applying or working on this multimodal approach, because as it was also said, we have started from a car-oriented perspective. And in 2028 is actually when the ITS directive mandates to create the digital TCPs would start at the end of the year. So we try to consider there. At the bottom, you can see a dashed box on the TIS grade proposal. I think many of the people here in the call already are part of this project proposal, which would, if it's approved, we still don't know, it's a CEF project that includes many member states, many cities, the cities that we have today here, Gothenburg, Helmond, but others, and it would be instrumental also to provide some resources and to be able to continue working on this and actually pilot. So that's a bit how we see things, the next steps, and how everything fits in this in the timeline for the legislative framework. And that's it for us. We still have a few minutes, and we actually had a few questions, so I'm gonna check them out. There's a question first, I think, Gerard, maybe for you. In the case of use case 1, is the thought to change the functional road classification on the road network based on, for example, seasonal metadata? I think, Gerard, you had a raised hand. You don't have to you can just talk.
No, I was accidentally raising my hand, right?
Okay.
To open the chat to read with you, and that's actually why I kind of missed the question in the end, I'm afraid. But it's the first question I think you refer to.
Yeah, indeed. I'm not really sure what is meant with this question. Yeah, maybe Paul, you can clarify. But then maybe we can take the next one about is a dynamic element in functional road classes to be considered as temporary traffic management measures, or could functional road classes contain dynamic elements, and on top of that there can be temporary traffic management measures? My interpretation would be the second, but I leave.
Yeah, that's indeed a bit more clear. Traffic circulation plans can be both static and dynamic in its way. but temporary traffic management measures are actually based in the RTTI in layer 3 as a temporary measure. Of course, they are somehow related to traffic circulation plan, but we share this data with service providers in the temporary layer. So if you, for instance, want to use the use cases to set up some temporary avoidance, that's something that you do in the traffic circulation plan itself. But if you want to set up traffic management measures from a temporary base, that's what you really should put in the specific layer that is in the RTTI, so service providers will get the right data that they need at that moment.
I think that answers it. I have a comment from Peter about contacting TISA, which have recently started functional road class harmonization. That's very much true. We are already in contact with them. This was presented also in a TISA meeting last November, I think it was. And indeed, we are happy to continue working on this. Also a comment from NAPCOR. We are also working with them and trying to figure out how this fits in their role and how we can work together. So those are two things that are already happening. And then there's a question about, do you consider to learn from service providers? Companies like here, TomTom, have a robust and consistent functional road classification in their maps and are consistent across countries. They are different classes, 1.5, 1.7. They are not perfect, but it might reinvent the wheel entirely. Maybe here I let Mikael or Luke comment on this, since you are actually working.
I can start comment. We know that there are different industrial approaches and also national approaches, but what we are suggesting is that we need sort of harmonized approach. So maybe there are to be conversions between some national initiative, but it should be based upon road authorities. Functional road classes, of course, because it's a policy routing. But of course, also, I cannot speak for everyone, but it's important, of course, to learn from history and see what is out there. And we don't have the full overview of what the situation is in all European countries and cities and regions. We have some examples, and from the examples, we understand that there are different approaches, and this needs to be considered, of course. And we hope that this can be that we can set up proof of concepts within the context of the TIS-grade project, so that we can learn from those as well. And service providers are also part of the TIS-grade project, of course.
If I may add, Mikael, to that, I fully agree with you. This should be policy related, the functional road class. But it doesn't mean that policy and usage will be the same in the city. Yeah, and I think there's a really important role for service provider as well, to give us a tap on the fingers if we say it's a really low road in policy, but in the way it was designed, the speed that can be driven there, the capacity that's being available, etc., doesn't fit to what the from a policy perspective was meant with the road. So there's and that should be, well, we should learn from each other, I would say, in the upcoming years.
And maybe I can switch back to the first question, Laura.
Yeah, on the dynamic.
Yeah, it's just a short minute, because if I read the question, well, we actually are working on to get the functional road classification that is used in Inspire and the OpenStreet law for many years to modify that to the DATEX2 as standard. That's been happening at the moment, if it's correct. And so more elements can be used there, but the thing is, road authorities are actually hardly ever storing data directly into DATEX. So we hope that some market parties or even public parties will come up with a kind of a dashboard to store this traffic circulation plan in, where you can even keep your functions in the FRC as they are, but if you have a temporary or dynamic measure, like in use case 1, that you can put on certain avoidance for the period of time that you're actually looking for. And we have to figure that out, how we can really get that into DATEX. And hopefully this great project is going to help us with that, to figure out how we actually are going to do that. So that's kind of an adventure at this moment. So I cannot really answer this question directly, but hopefully this is an answer that we have to figure out together how to do this correctly.
Thank you. Thank you to the three of you. And then Annette also just mentions that tooling for digitizing traffic circulation plans is in scope of this great proposal. So, yep, we are all looking forward to this being approved, so we can keep working on this and actually ensure that we have the resources and capacity to do it. And with that, actually, I don't see any more questions. We have reached 5 o'clock, so we don't need them to go over time. Then I would like to thank all of our speakers. Tiffany had to go because he was running out of power, but to Luke, Mika, and Gerard, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone that attended. We are happy to continue working on this. If you have questions, if you want to help us, connect us also with other organizations or initiatives working on the topic, then please do reach out, and we are happy to keep this collaboration going. So thank you to all of you, and see you soon.
Thank you.